Hello, everyone. We are going to talk about the three lies keeping you from pivoting that I actually believe too. This is for anyone who is exhausted with their current work situation, probably anxious about what's next. And what's next could mean like literally if you log on today at work, could it be your last day? Or just generally, what is next in your career? And you know you need something different, but you don't know what or how to pivot without blowing up your life. This video will free you, especially the third lie. So actually watch the whole thing because I believed all three of these, and believing them cost me a lot of time and a lot of money. And in 8 minutes, I want to save you what it took me years to figure out. So let's get into lie number one. Lie number one that I told myself, and I hear a lot of my clients say, just a lot of people say, is I need to figure out the plan. I need to know more things. And this comes from when you were younger, we were always asked, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? And then when we grew up, we were then asked, like, what is your 5-year plan? What is next? So most of us were raised with the idea or just always prompted to have a 5-year plan, to have a clean story. You know, you pick the degree, you pick the major, you get a job. We were told to always look for the next title. The next title always had to be lined up, it had to be linear, right? And this gave us certainty. And if you don't have all that, if you don't have the 5-year plan, if you don't have the next title, if you don't know exactly what is going to happen next, then you can't move. Then you have to wait. So you think, you research, you ask questions, you hum and you ha, and then you go to brunch and you talk about it. And you like pull out your hair every time your boss sends you an email or you have to do another meeting. And but you tell yourself, doing all the thinking, the researching, the talking, the podcasting, you tell yourself it's the responsible thing to do. Here's what I learned after a number of months, if not at least a whole year of just misery, is that we've never actually lived in 5 or 10 year plans. I don't know about you, but as a millennial, every plan I've ever made, especially if I made a 5-year, 10-year plan, has not come to fruition. My 6 months plans have, my 1 year plans have, but the 5 years or 10 years, by the time we get there, we're already adjusting to whatever the new reality is, whether that's economic crisis, whether that's a job crash in the market, whether that's AI, whether that's just like um, COVID. And you know, like we are living in unprecedented times. And unfortunately, we're the generation that was told that there'll be one or two unprecedented times. And if you are in your 30s or older, you have lived through, my gosh, every single year you can probably name an unprecedented time, which means that if we're living in so many unprecedented times, what we are learning is that the only way to really move forward is to move forward. It's not to make a grand plan. Because by making your grand plan and trying to stick to it 10 toes down means that as the world adapts and changes, you're not allowed to do the same. So this is not saying don't make a plan at all, because I do think plans are needed to guide you, but it should enable you to pivot, not stay stuck. Because we just don't live in the 5-year, 10 plan, whatever career anymore. We are not getting any watches, we're not getting a pension, which is fine, right? Once you're like, okay, well, this is my reality, it becomes easier to manage. And you're like, okay, the industry's shifting, tools are changing, roles are disappearing. Entire teams are getting wiped out overnight. So waiting until we're ready, writing out this plan doesn't really protect us anymore in the way that it did back in the day. It just delays movement. And the longer we delay movement means we're delaying the next thing we need to learn to get ready for the next pivot. The folks that are actually doing well right now are they're not the ones who had everything figured out, because I know I definitely didn't have everything figured out. Once I finally made a move, especially my career, was after I was laid off. And I decided, okay, rather than jumping right into the next thing, I'll take some time and I'll learn the different skill sets. And once I did that, I just kept moving. And movement direction And that I think that's why you need kind of like a vague plan, or like understand your values and what you want. That gives you direction, not certainty, but direction. And that difference really makes a world of change, because direction says, I know what I want more of and less of, right? So I want more time freedom. I want more money. I want more flexibility. I want less managing other people. I want less being in an environment that is constantly on the go. Once you know what you want more of and what you want less of, it becomes just easier to at least go in the direction and allow that to kind of open up doorways and opportunities for you. So that's what direction does. If we're waiting for certainty, certainty says, I need to know exactly where this lands before I take a step. And with things changing so quickly, certainty will keep you stuck, because as soon as you figured it out and you've created the roadmap, something else changes. And now you have to recalibrate all over again. But if you're just saying, hey, you know what, no matter where the world is going, right now, what I need is more time with my family, then it's easier to find that opportunity, no matter what is happening. So I will say most people aren't stuck because we lack clarity. I was very clear in what I wanted less of, what I wanted more of, especially when I was in a job that was not aligned with who I needed to be and who I was in that moment. I was very clear, right? However, I was so stuck because I was trying to eliminate risk in a world that doesn't work like that anymore. So I kept staying put. And by staying put, I didn't figure out what was next until they kind of like forced my hand through the layoff. So lie number one is this idea of really and truly letting go of the idea that we need a long-term plan, because I used to be the queen of 5 and 10 year plans. I can pull up my Excel sheets from when I was younger. I had a lot of those, and we've moved on from that. So, yeah. Line number two, it's safer to stay where you are, because who would even hire me? This is a lie. Oh my gosh, that had me in such a chokehold. And I'll go through this a bit faster. It had me in such a chokehold. This is the one that sounds responsible on the surface, but oh my gosh, it's so like baked into low self-esteem, imposter syndrome, all this stuff. Because I was telling myself all sorts of things as to like, especially like the company I worked for would always like talk about how we're the smartest and the brightest and the best who ever did it. And at that time, I'd come to the conclusion that I actually wasn't the smartest and the brightest. So every time I heard that, I was like, oh my God, they must have made a mistake when they hired me. And like, long story short, they didn't make a mistake. Yes, I met whatever they were saying, but because the way things were happening at the company, I didn't feel that way. So I was living heavily in imposter syndrome. And I was like, oh my gosh, where can I go to next? So I think that's one of those reasons imposter syndrome can keep you back. But I also think I hear so many other things from folks of, I'm starting a family, the market is bad, better the devil I know. I should be grateful. I'll wait till next quarter. I'll wait till my bonus. There's always something that is keeping you in a space that you have decided, your mind has said it's no longer for you, but you keep staying there. So oof, gosh, woof. All I can say is woof, because the way I stayed, because of all the things I told myself. My gosh, I stayed for all the sensible reasons, right? And then again with the layoff, it really just shook me. At no point was I guaranteed safety, and that's what I was hedging on. I was like, well, if I stay here, at least I'm safe, and I never was, and that's the layoff proved that. The I kept telling myself I have to wait for the perfect time to move, but there isn't any. Um, there's only time before the decision is made for you, right? So like I could have left earlier, but I chose not to, and then at some point the decision was made for me, and that's it, right? And companies are not doing all the calculations you're doing. Once they're not saying, oh, we know we just had a conversation about her, because you have to bring your authentic self to work. So they're not saying, oh, we just had a conversation with her and she said that she's about to buy a house or do this or do this, so let's not lay her off. They're like, no, we're done, we're good. They're working on what's convenient for them. So I really and truly, it's how can I make this convenient for me in my life? And part of that is not waiting until you need a job to get a job, but that's a whole different video, a whole different conversation. But anyways, but once we internalize that staying put, staying put stops feeling safe and starts feeling passive, right? Once we realize that it's a business and we also need to take care of ourselves and our bottom lines, then we realize that, okay, me staying here is no longer safe, but it's really a passive choice that is costing me time, money, mental health, so many other things. And at some point, it's kind of reckless to stay because loyalty does not equal leverage. It does not equal not getting laid off. It does not equal not getting, or or you will not necessarily get a promotion just because you were loyal in that way of just staying, right? So if you already feel like it's time to move, that feeling matters, and it's like so important to listen to it because I know every time I didn't listen to it, I was like, oh gosh, it's this thing when you don't listen to yourself. That type of regret and resentment is so wild because you're like, bro, I literally knew this. Why didn't I listen to myself? It's just wild. So let's not ignore ourselves, our inner voice anymore, right? Just let's just acknowledge it and move on, even if we're scared. Okay. And as I said, the last line number three, I hear this so much. And when I was in the environments that I really wanted to move from, so many people around me were thinking about doing this. So I thought too that this must have been the next step. And that is needing another degree or credential. And this one is sneaky because going back to school feels productive, it feels responsible, it feels like progress. But most of the time, it's a delay tactic. If I'm being very honest, it's a delay tactic. You're sinking a lot of time and money into this. And I think what most people don't want to hear is you don't need another degree. You need to translate what you already have. And I think for me, what I realized when I was weighing my options was, okay, I've done all these different jobs. I've been in startups and all this good stuff. And now I'm going back in the job market. How do I reflect what I've done in what the job market wants today? Because really and truly, there's really nothing new under the sun. It's just repackaging over and over and over and over again. So how do I repackage what I have to be what is needed in the current market? Because I didn't have a skill problem, and most professionals don't have a skill problem either. What we have is a language problem, it's a translation problem. And shout out to me and my immigrant family. I speak and understand a lot of languages. So I was like, this is let me translate this, right? Because if you already have the experience, you already have the pattern recognition, you already know how to solve problems, the market is just calling you for you to name it something different. And degrees don't fix that because the point of a degree is to teach you a skill, to teach you a theory. But if you already know the theory, you already know the skill, and even better yet, you've applied that in a different way, it's not a matter of going back to school, it's a matter of translating what you already have. And translation can be uncomfortable because it forces us to actually do an inventory of our skills. Like sit down. Because I know for me, for the longest, when people are like, "Oh, what are you good at?" I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know." And it's like, "Well, girl, you have a job." And quite frankly, the way I used to frame it to like my former clients, especially people who were pivoting from front facing roles to more corporate roles, was no one is going to keep paying you every 2 weeks, every month, whatever, if you're not adding value, if you don't have skills. They won't do it because they want as much money as possible. So the fact that like you've been hired and you've been maintaining a job means that you have skills. So let's figure that out. And I also think it's important to stop hiding behind credentials. I think that doesn't really hold weight anymore. I think back in the day, if you said you graduated from certain colleges, if you had a certain degree, you would probably instantly get a job. I'm not saying that's totally not the case anymore, but I think it's a little bit harder. Right now, what people are really looking for is can you solve problems and can you execute? Can you ship something? And if the answer is yes, and you have a portfolio or project, whatever, to show that, you're probably going to get the job faster than someone with like a fancy degree and fancy whatever who only speaks in theory but cannot actually show me, hey, I did this thing, I made money out of it, I can make money for you too. And it all comes down to learning how to articulate your value in today's language. And what I mean by that is right now, I think, let's say you used to be a marketer. People are no longer hiring for marketers. They're hiring for storytellers. This is a list I saw today. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Um, People are no longer hiring for just like a regular software engineer. They're hiring for an AI engineer. Now, all of this stuff requires continuous learning, but it's not things that you need to necessarily go back to school for, but they are things that you need to package for. So that way you can signal to whoever is hiring that, hey, I understand the current market. And honestly, if you have to learn on the job, go learn on the job. But that's really and truly what it is. Okay, I can't find. I thought, okay, here it is actually. So like if you used to be an account manager, now you're client success. If you used to be a business analyst, now you're product, right? If you want to do something in HR, now you're people team, you're people's operations manager. If you were in IT, now you're tech. So none of this, the core skills aren't changing, but the way we talk about it are. And your experience compounds. Another degree doesn't necessarily do that, but your experience and what you can prove that you've done in different settings does compound. So that's what you need to do. So all three lies have one thing in common. If you listen to them, they keep you waiting. They kept me waiting for a really long time. They kept me waiting for clarity. They kept me waiting for safety. They kept me waiting for permission. And they also meant they kept me waiting from having a bigger bank account and peace of mind. And a lot of us have learned the hard way that waiting does not protect you. The real crisis isn't that your career is broken necessarily, because we all figured out a long time ago that we are on a career stairmaster rather than a career ladder, and we want to hop off of it. A lot of people want to hop off of that stairmaster. And the way to do that is to really understand your story. If this is resonating, it's probably because you don't need more information. You need help thinking strategically about your own background. That's the work I do. Not dream jobs, but aligned moves, skill stacking, helping experienced professionals translate what they already know, what you already know, into roles that actually make sense for you in your current season of life. So if you're tired of forcing yourself into job titles that don't fit anymore, into roles, into career trajectories that no longer fit, if you're tired of like running that stairmaster, I got you. That's what I do. That's what I help folks with. So there's a link below if you want to reach out. So please do. If you want more of these videos and advice of how to navigate the current job market, subscribe for more, and I will see you tomorrow.